transferring the concept of excellence to people that you lead? How much of it do you think is taught? How much is caught? And if, obviously it's probably a little bit of both, but how much of the taught version when you're teaching excellence, like how do you teach excellence in a practical way to like somebody that's on your team, somebody that's, even if you're a parent and you're teaching your kids, anything you can add in on like teaching excellence?
I think I'd like to say I'm interested in hearing what Pastor John wants to, chime in on. I'm finding in my leadership over the last 5 years or so that it's way more taught than caught. I don't rely on people catching it anymore because they don't catch it the right way. Sure. So it's like, I want to talk about it. I want to see it in print, tactile, because I think people's attention spans and their care levels are too distracted to just think that people are going to see it, and it's not by osmosis as much anymore. It might have been back in the days, but I feel like you got to tell people. In the absence of clarity, people fill in the blanks, and they usually do so with worst case scenarios. So I feel like the more and more, especially the season that we're getting ready to go into, it's definitely going to be more taught than caught. It's like, we got to tell you this is why we do what we do.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think with your children, I think you want to talk to them about the important things. Mm-hmm. Like, you want to talk to your children about how to handle finances. Mm-hmm. And, we don't want to overextend ourselves. We don't want to spend more than we make. We don't want to get into debt. We don't want to, we want to pay our bills on time. I just think some of that's like important. I think some children are more aggressive, and more loose and more free, and they need it probably more. Yeah. Others are more conservative, and maybe they need to be encouraged to spend a little bit. But, you kind of see your kids and you kind of help. But I think intentionality is massive. And if it matters to you, I think you got to talk about it. And if you can talk about it in a humble, respectful way to people, like if you're trying to develop somebody where you see a lack of excellence in their life, to encourage them in a loving way. They may have never had my dad taught me how to shake hands.
Right.
So he just taught me how to do that. Yep. Simple, right? But I remember it. And so some people don't know how to look me in the eye, right, and have a nice, good conversation with me. So I think to have the heart of a father, have the heart of a mother, you're going to help train and develop people. Your goal is not just, I want you to perform better for me. Your goal is you're going to do better in life if you follow through with some of these spot on, some of these forms of simple little things. I think it's and you could do it in a loving way. You got to do it in a loving way, in a gracious way. But it's just like, I just noticed you don't ever look at me. You hardly ever look me in the eye when we have a conversation. Yep. Mm-hmm. Like, it's important to be present. It's okay. You don't have to look down. You don't need to feel ashamed. You don't need whatever. Yeah. I could go on and on
what
about it.
What if we take it a step further?
Intentionality.
Yeah, take it a step further and talk to the leader who's leading like multiple layers of team and people. And how do you push excellence down to the furthest edge of an organization, a church, a business, a team, when you're not in the room every time and you don't get to see whether it's excellent or not every time? Any thoughts on that?
I think it's the hardest thing in the world. And I think every business and church is struggling with it. Any church that has multiple locations and multiple layers, any business, it's culture, right? Really what you're talking about is culture, and culture's hard to get down to the edges of the organization. Maybe it's a matter of choosing people that do have excellence, and maybe it's about developing excellence in the people that are around you and encouraging them to not cut corners with the people that they're developing. It's just you're counting on it going down.
Yeah. It's a high level of management, and I think it's also making strategic times where you're checking for excellence in different areas and celebrating it where you find it, right? Like when you celebrate things, people want to repeat it. It's the classic reward what you want repeated.
Yep.
And I think people are more driven toward feeling reward. And so at our church, we like to do this every so often. You know, we have these kind of in-gathering rallies. I think it's part of creating a huddle culture. Sometimes we call it touchdowns, right? It's the opportunity to just keep reinforcing why we do what we do. It's why we've adopted organizational values. So we have metrics and standards to kind of push that down as best as you can. But it's difficult, right? And every so often, the senior leader, Pastor John, you do this, I do this, Parker, you do this as well. You gotta get where everything's at. You gotta walk out into that lobby. You gotta figure, go into the bathroom and check it out and see what's every so often. You gotta go to that outward fringes of the organization. For us, that might be the parking lot and checking out the parking team and watching how things are. You can't do it every week, but you do have to do it sometimes to make sure that it's
very good.